When I started writing my sequel to my debut novel, Ember in the Mist, I was certain that writing book 2 would be much easier than book 1. I already knew the characters, the world building, I knew exactly where the story was going. So book 2 should be easier than writing book 1, right? Boy, was I wrong. In today's video, I am going to be sharing the lessons I've learned in writing book 2 so that you can avoid the roller coaster of writing a sequel. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is author Brenda Lynn. I am a Canadian author of children's books as well as the Christian fantasy series, The Pure Gems of Bizarria. Today's video is one I've been looking forward to write for a while because I'm currently working on a sequel myself. Book 2 in the Pure Gems of Bizarria series is called Ripples of the Past. We continue with our main character Naraya and her friends Asher and Tamara into a quest in a new city so they can complete their mission to reunite the kingdom together. Before I jump into today's video with the lessons, I just want to mention that I was quite surprised when it came to writing a sequel, especially preparing for one. Naturally, I looked through YouTube to see if there were any resources about writing a sequel, and I honestly found a couple of them, but they were kind of saying all similar things, and it was mostly focused on the prepping part rather than how to write it. And so I did feel a little bit discouraged at the beginning because I wasn't really quite getting the answers I was looking for, like questions that I would want for myself. Don't get me wrong, there was a lot of resources and planning of how to prepare for a sequel, what to look for, and the structure of it. But I was really thinking about how I'm supposed to write it, how I'm supposed to publish it, more of a process way so that I knew that I was on the right path. The ones I found really useful, I'll link them below, but these are the videos that I found really gave me a clearer idea of what a sequel should be and how it should be written. But I'm gonna share lessons that are my experience, my lessons that had to be lived so that I could genuinely understand this sequel process. I have my notes here, so I will be sharing 7 lessons about writing a sequel. Lesson number 1. Book 2 is its own story. This was probably the biggest lesson I learned about writing a sequel, and it may seem so obvious that yes, clearly it's a sequel, it should be its own book, but it's so easy to fall into the trap of writing basically a 2.0 of book 1 as book 2. So you gotta keep in mind that readers just finished book 1. They don't want to read another version of the book they just read. They want something that's new. They want something that answers questions. They want something that advances the story. For example, another adventure, another conflict, another emotional journey. And yes, it does continue from book 1, but book 2 must reveal new things that make it its own. Besides me just looking at the resources online, I also looked at books that I was reading or books that also had a sequel. And one of the books that really helped me see book 1 and 2 have, similar themes, but there's definitely something different happening in book 2 is this book by B.B. Alston called Amari and the Great Game. So themes of, having to prove yourself and, she facing some doubts and having to make some big decisions, they play in both book 1 and 2. But book 2 is clearly different. You see there's growth. You see there's changes. You do see some reoccurring fears or lies from book 1 that do repeat in book 2. But when we look at book 1 and 2, we can clearly see this is not a 2.0. This is its own story. Reading this as a reader and an author were really helpful in seeing how a sequel, yes, is building off book 1, but is definitely standing on its own. Lesson number 2. I might have mentioned this a little bit before when I was saying lesson number 1, but although book 2 is its own story, it has to remember book 1. It can't just forget it. Nobody wants to read a sequel where they're like,
huh? What is going on here?
Right? They need to know that the author took the time to make sure there are references from the first book in the second one. You might relate to this, but one of the favorite moments for me as a reader is when a detail from a previous book is so much more relevant now in the second one or in the series later. And it could be a conversation, it could be a prophecy, a character, or maybe an insignificant moment that happened in, let's say, book one that makes so much more sense now in book two. And those are moments that are going to let your readers stay with you, but also it's going to be evident that you took the time to make those connections in writing a good sequel. When I was writing my sequel, Ripples of the Past, I had to ask myself, what are some things in book one that were left unsolved or unanswered? And what deserves to be discovered in book two? An example, and it's not a spoiler, is that Naraya lives in a sealed town from the rest of the world of Bitsaria. In book two, it talks about how and why it got sealed in the first place. That tells my readers that, I got you. I know you have questions. Don't worry, I will answer them. Revealing that in book two just, puts readers at ease, but also reflects on the author's thinking and the connections that they are doing between the two books, the debut and its sequel. Lesson number 3. Every book has its own arc, and so does the series. This was another big mind shift for me because, yes, we know that every good book has a beginning, middle, and end, but because you're writing a sequel, or maybe it's not just a duology, or you are writing a trilogy or a series of multiple books, it also needs its own arc because there is clearly a beginning, a middle, and end to the whole series of your stories. At the same time, every novel you are writing is contributing to a bigger overall story of the series, which is important for you to be intentional with each of the books you're writing, whether it's just a debut and a sequel or it has a third book. But it's important as the author to make sure that the connections are making sense, that things are progressing, that there is growth happening, that answers are being given from previous book questions or thoughts from moments that you haven't explained yet. And for me, I actually found it very helpful when I finally got it to think of each book as having two separate arcs. The arc of its book that has its clear beginning, middle, and end, but where does this book fit in the overall series? It also has to answer the full series that you are writing to. Okay, lesson number 4. You have to let your characters continue growing. One thing I really had to work on was to ensure that my characters didn't stop growing in book 1. I also didn't want the old habits that my character had maybe at the beginning of my debut to repeat in book 2. Yes, I understand it is the same character, but there was growth in book 1, and there needs to continue being growth in book 2, 3, 4, and 5. So maybe this character had a fear, and the fear was revealed to be a lie in book 1. Now the character knows it's a lie, but maybe they struggle and battle with doubt, or maybe they have guilt. So now that is a second layer to that fear. And then I can explore that in book 2. In book 3, maybe they feel they've accomplished beating that lie, but maybe something arises or a challenge that tests their growth. So it's important to always have your characters growing, changing, developing, evolving as you write your story along. And it's very important to make that evident in your sequel. And that's what makes characters feel real while readers are reading our books. Just like us, there will come a time that seasons will test us and challenges might shape us to become better the next time. And growth must be evident. This is lesson number 5. And this is a big truth bomb. And I want you to hear me say this because I'm going to say it twice. The pressure of writing a sequel is real. Let me say that again. The pressure of writing a sequel is very, very real. I let you hear me say this twice because this was probably the biggest lesson I had to learn emotionally. After writing my debut novel, I did already start writing book 2. And then I was putting pressure on myself to make sure it was going the right direction I wanted it to. Then months became a couple years. Honestly, I started thinking, what is wrong with me? Why is it taking so long? Why can't this just be done already? Why can't I just sit down and finish drafting this book? And so many other questions came forth. I just wanted book 2 to be out so that it could just be sitting on the shelf next to my debut novel. Just having that pressure made writing even difficult in itself. Eventually, though, I discovered that my sequel didn't have to be perfect. At that stage, it needed to be written. That was the main goal. And I had to remind myself the importance of getting it out there, the importance of just having the sequel written at first so I can go through the process. Because me worrying about how my second book is going to come out, how it's going to look, how readers are going to like it, takes more time and doesn't get that book that I want out to readers in the first place, if you get what I mean. I quickly learned that, that pressure is coming from myself. It is a real pressure. It is a real fear. I addressed it, I acknowledged it, and I fought it to make sure that I don't keep staying in that cycle that prevents my sequel from coming out to the world. Because the greatest sequel out there is the one readers get to read. Worrying about how it's going to be is not going to achieve any goals for me when it comes to book 2. Okay, lesson number 6. One thing that tremendously helped me and probably will help you is not just having an outline for book 1 or an outline for book 2, but having an overall book outline so that you can have everything that's going to happen for each book in the same place. So basically a series outline that helps you know where all the notes need to be at once. And I can show you an example. So here is a template that you can get below, but I just want to explain it a little bit so that you have an idea. As you can see, it mentions the names of the characters, the books. So maybe you don't have the titles yet, that's fine, but you can number them. It mentions notes on the characters, where they appear in the book, significant notes that are needed for this character, where we see them in the series, so maybe different locations, different kingdoms, or different time zones, timelines, your choice. But basically, all of this is to keep all your ideas in one place. And I find that a structure like this helps you put ideas that won't appear for a while, or probably a couple books coming in. Having a bigger roadmap like this is going to help you in the guidance of not just writing your sequel, but the books that will come along. And it's important for you to know exactly what you need to reference so that you can do the proper connections between, for instance, the debut and the sequel, or any other of the books that follow in the series. Final lesson number 7. You must enjoy the journey. As simple as that. If you have to take only one thing out of this video, it's this. As much as you've worked on this sequel, as much as you've planned and outlined and brainstorm, if you don't have joy in what you're doing, why are you still pushing yourself? You have to enjoy it. You have to love what you're doing. You have to be excited. You have to be joyful about this journey. Because though things may not be going as quickly as you want, or you may not be getting the results that you were hoping to have based on a timeline that you're giving yourself, remember, slow progress is still progress. And I'm speaking from experience. There have been moments where I wish that I had finished sooner, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, or I was comparing myself to other authors that have written 2-3 books and I started at the same time as them and I'm still just with the debut novel. I started questioning myself and saying, am I even good enough to do this sequel? Am I missing something? Is this really for me? And the truth is, now that I look back, I wouldn't have learned any of the lessons I shared with you if I had just rushed through it or just tried to, reach a timeline rather than actually diving deep into this book. Because I don't want to give you a book that you're just going to read and I say, check, I finished writing a sequel. I want you to read a book that's gonna make you excited, glad you waited, and worth it. That is more gold than just having a sequel in your hands. Writing this sequel has definitely taught me so much more than what I thought it would be. And as my story is growing in itself, so am I. I have different seasons of life, and different experiences that I'm going to have are always going to present some sort of challenge, some sort of setback, and I have the choice to make them stop me or keep pushing through so I can reach my goals. I'm glad that I got over those hurdles of doubting myself and trying to be something that I wasn't ready to be yet until I experienced what I did. I'm glad, and I've learned. Now this is part of me. This is my experience. This is part of a growth I've had for myself. And so when it comes to writing book 3, I hope, and I'm sure I will remember, that I went through this in book 2. I can avoid it for book 3 as much as I can, but in the same time, it's going to be some lessons that I'm going to carry with me so that I can be a better writer, a better creator, and I wouldn't trade this experience for anything. You stopped and stumbled upon this video because you have been facing challenges in your sequel journey. I'm here to tell you that as much as you have gone through, trust me, in the end, it's going to be worth it. Maybe the challenges were unexpected. Maybe you thought you would be further on, but know this, you are exactly where you need to be. Every chapter you write is also every chapter of your author journey. And I hope that the lessons I've shared will help you in future books, just as I hope it will help me in mine. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you are a writer and you are writing a sequel right now, or you're planning to, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you've written a sequel already, you plan to, or you're currently writing one now, I'd like to hear from you and know, what do you think would be the biggest challenge, or is the biggest challenge when it comes to a sequel? And if you are a reader, what makes a good sequel stand out? If you found this video helpful, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. And remember to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any new videos that will be coming up next. And if you know of another writer who would benefit from what I shared today, please feel free to share it with them. Have a wonderful day, everyone. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.